So today, what I want to talk about is John Kabat-Zinn. You probably have heard me talk about him before. Um, John Kabat-Zinn is probably, let's say, the grandfather of mindfulness in the Western world, in the United States. He really brought what we now know of as mindfulness-based stress reduction. It's an 8-week course to the United States. If you just look up mindfulness based stress reduction, it's an 8-week course, and it's very well done. And there, you know how I say, hey, I request that you uh, I request that you do 5 minutes of practice a day. They require 45 minutes of practice a day. So it's a little bit more intensive. But what he did is he went to India and China and came back, and he was at the University of Massachusetts, and he wanted to bring mindfulness to the patients there. And this was back in the 80s, and nobody really knew mindfulness. We didn't really have a culture of meditation here in the United States. And so he thought that, he had a great idea that the only way that anyone's ever going to listen to me is if I start doing research. And so he actually started writing. He was a molecular biologist. He was actually a cell biologist. And so he started doing research on mindfulness. And initially, he wasn't getting many people to sign up. You can imagine in the 80s. So he tells this story of so he was at the University of Massachusetts, and he had a talk on mindfulness where all the heads of the departments of the hospital showed up, and they had to show up to like get credit for CMEs or something like that. It wasn't that they showed up out of interest; they showed up out of necessity, let's say. And anyway, so he's giving this talk on mindfulness. He's saying he's having a hard time getting patients, and nobody was making the referrals. And so what he said is we're doing it for free, and we are doing it in the hospital cafeteria for free after the hospital cafeteria closes at night after dinner. So imagine the cafeteria closes at 8 p.m. or something like that. At 8:30 p.m., he starts doing his mindfulness. And he was getting, trickling. Maybe people were still eating and they were listening. And so then he goes to the heads of the departments, and he says, look, send me your worst patients. Send me the patients that take up all your time. Send me the patients. And he was talking about the patients that were inpatient. So they were actually hospitalized patients, but these weren't patients in the ICU yet. But they were patients who were sick enough to be hospitalized, but they were cleared to be able to ambulate down to the cafeteria, for instance. And he was like, look, send me your worst, send me the patients that take the most time when you're rounding, who are the ones that ask 1,000 questions, whatever it is, right? And so now he got the ears of the chairs of the departments. He was like, hey, if he can help with the patients that take the most time, our quote unquote worst patients, send me with everyone that you don't want to deal with during the day. And so they started actually making these recommendations. So, if you can go down to the hospital cafeteria at night and practice this thing and see. And what they started noticing is that their requirements for how long they spent, for instance, rounding, started to decrease, that kindness started to increase, et cetera, et cetera. And so he got the attention of these hospital heads and be like, whoa, this is an interesting practice. This was back in the 80s. And his first studies were actually to practice mindfulness, do 6 to 8 weeks of practice of mindfulness, And what we're going to do is we're going to take blood samples from people, and we're going to look at pre and post blood samples. And we're also going to do it in people with chronic pain. So chronic pain was actually one of the first sort of populations of people to have mindfulness studied for. And he was also taking blood samples from these people and doing pre and post blood sample after 6 or 8 weeks of mindfulness practice, and really noticing that inflammation markers decreased. So by practicing mindfulness, they started noticing that inflammation markers decreased, and then linked it to helping to decrease things like stress, improving cortisol response in the body, where you're actually improving stress hormone responses in the body to help decrease stress. And if you, I've talked about this book in the past, Undo It. Undo It is a book that is written by Dean Ornish. And, he's looked at inflammation as a whole in cardiovascular diseases, and decreasing stress is one of his 4 pillars of trying to decrease inflammation. That if we learn how to change our response to stress or decrease the stress in our body, that we can actually alter the levels of inflammation, levels of chronic inflammation that are found in our body. So Jon Kabat-Zinn, he has published many books. If you haven't read any of his books, I highly recommend it. He has written, I think I mentioned it the other day, Wherever You Go, There You Are, which is a perfect sort of, mindfulness book. Like wherever you go, there you are. He also published one called Full Catastrophe Living, which is sort of his Bible for mindfulness. In that book, he has the 7 attitudes, the attitudinal foundations for mindfulness practice. And I go through these simply as a reminder for everyone who is either doing this practice, who is new to this practice, who has done this practice for years. These are always good sort of attitudinal markers to check yourself on. When you are doing your practice, how are you doing with some of these foundations? How are you doing with some of these markers? Even throughout your day, how are you doing with some of these markers? And maybe even, you have a little chart up on your refrigerator that has these 7 attitudinal foundations that just help remind you throughout the day of, maybe I should be a little bit more patient. So today what I wanted to do is, as we expand into mindfulness practice, look at these are Jon Kabat-Zinn's 7 foundations for mindfulness practice. So the first one, which is actually included in his definition of mindfulness, is non-judging. All right. That's a tough one, right? For many of us, we are most of the time judging either ourselves or others. Most of the time there's that self-judge that comes out. I'm not doing this right, et cetera, et cetera. It's not that we need to squash the non-judging mind. It's that we need to be really aware of it. Like, oh, look at that judgment that just came up about myself or about my friend or about the clerk, the grocery clerk, whatever it might be. And what non-judging allows us to kind of look at is, can you be, even though the experience may be happening to you, can you be an impartial witness to what is occurring, as opposed to you're doing it right, you're doing it good, you're doing it bad, you're doing it wrong. Oftentimes there might even be like a stream of judgments. Okay. And when you notice the stream of judgments, you might actually be judging yourself that you're judging yourself, which is always a good one. And again, it's not to stop that stream, it's to simply be aware of it. So can I be an impartial witness to what's occurring in the present moment? And see if you can, as an impartial witness, notice the judge and then keep on noticing and see what happens. That you're not trying to block anything or stop anything, but you're literally just noticing what happens. What happens most of the time is that once you recognize the judge sort of quiets down. It's almost like the judge wants to be heard. But once the judge is heard and it's aware, hey, that's my judge. Hey, how you doing, judge? You invite it in for a cup of tea and it sits down and has the tea, and then it might not be so critical. Okay. The second one is patience, letting things unfold in their own time. So many of us sit down, let's say, to meditate or to do a practice, and I thought I was going to feel peaceful after this. What's going on? Right? I'm not doing this right. It's not working for me. Right? There may be, it's almost like we're trying to hurry up the natural unfoldment of things. So we're not patient, right? Imagine what it would be like if you planted a flower and you saw the initial sprout, and you squashed the sprout because you didn't see the flower on day 2 as opposed to day 14 when it was gonna pop out. Right? You never see it. Imagine trying to, for instance, hurry up a caterpillar form a chrysalis to become a butterfly. It'd be futile. In fact, it would stop the process in its tracks. Right? That's occurring. That same transformation may be occurring in us. And if we judge it, or we're not patient with it, or we don't trust the natural unfoldment of things, then we may never see the butterfly, right? We may never see the flower that emerges from the work that's done by planting the seed, by the soil, by the water, by the sun, by the sprout coming up, So this patience involves being open to the moment, accepting the moment, and just being present with that natural, what's the spring that's coming up at this time, and being totally okay with that. Right. The next one is beginner's mind. This is a really good one, and one that oftentimes we jump to, especially after we've had some time to practice. Oh, I know what this leads to. That we feel like we already know everything, that we feel like we already know what the experience has in store for us, for instance, that we already know what, let's say, doing a practice will lead to, as opposed to being totally open with where it may go. Having a beginner's mind, a curiosity about things. I've mentioned, I've used the words an open curiosity, right? Almost as if you're a child investigating a sensation for the first time. That it's not, oh, there's my back pain. I know what that is. It's like, oh, let me see if can I investigate that? As if this specific sensation has never occurred before in the past. I have no idea. I'm going to come to it, and you look at, let's say you grab a piece of paper, and if I was to describe this piece of paper, and I've never felt paper or anything soft, how would I describe it? If I closed my eyes, would I smell it? Would I taste it? Right? How would I describe it as a sensation? How large is it? What's the color? Et cetera, et cetera. And having a beginner's mind. The next one is trust. Right? Trusting in the process. Trusting in the beginner's mind. Trusting in the patience. Trusting in the non-judgmental. Trusting in whatever is unfolding now in this moment as being totally perfect. Okay? That this is what is coming up. You can't argue with what is appearing right now. You could, but that might cause resistance and suffering. Right? So if you just pay attention, what is emerging now for you? It's not like you might not want it, but that doesn't mean it's not occurring. You might not be able to change what is occurring now in the future to something else, but that doesn't still stop what is happening now. And if we're resisting what's happening now, and we're judging what's happening now, and we're not patient with what's happening now, then what's the likelihood that we're going to trust anything that comes out? Can't trust this moment. I can't trust this experience. I can't trust anything, right? Because I'm resisting it. And so if we can learn and cultivate, some people, you might find some of these to be more difficult than others for yourself. But if we can cultivate trust, that you trust that, okay, what is happening in this moment, let's say, is happening. I might not like it. It might not be pleasant. It might not be what I want. And then you notice, oh, I'm judging the moment. It's not what I want. I want something different. There's desire that's arising in this moment. And then maybe you can pay attention to desire. How does desire come into your life? Does desire make you be less patient? Does desire make you be less trusting? Does desire make you be more judgmental? Or whatever it might be. So there's an aspect of trust of, okay, what if I allow, and we've done this, right? What if for this moment, I don't resist anything? And I trust that what is coming up in this moment is perfect. And I just sort of sit here and say, okay, I'm just going to give trust a try. And I'm not going to be impatient I might not even notice anything. Maybe I get frustrated with myself because the judge comes out because nothing happens. And I want, global peace and conscious unity or whatever you want. Along with patience and trust comes non-striving. That there's no goal. That might be difficult for some, right? Maybe you signed up for this class because you want your pain to decrease. Maybe you signed up for this class because you want some experience. But the goal of meditation is simply to be with yourself, truly with yourself, and to have a fundamental, direct experience of who you are. It's not, let's say, necessarily to attain inner peace or ultimate joy or pure love or whatever it might be, or have a pain-free moment. That might occur, but sometimes having the goal, then the patience comes up, the lack of patience comes up because maybe that goal is not being reached. but some other things are. And that's why I don't necessarily really talk too much about if you do the practice, what will occur. But, having trust in the natural unfoldment of things for yourself, there may be benefits from the practice. Right? So there's non-striving. What am I doing? I'm just spending time with myself. That's it. Getting to know my mind. I'm understanding the nature of my mind. No, and what would you like from that? Don't know. Beginner's mind, right? I don't know what will come. Who knows? I'll have patience, though. I'll have patience. And I'm not going to judge it. I'm not going to slap myself along the way. There's no right or wrong about it. I'm just going to be with it, with what is arising in this moment. Acceptance. It's a big one. Okay. How many of you are not accepting something that is happening in your life right now? How many of you are not accepting? Do you want something different than what is? Different than what is. I'd like to make more money, less money. I'd like to work more, work less. I'd like to have a car. I'd like to be able to drive more, drive less. I'd like to be able to walk more, walk less. I'd like to be able to watch more TV, watch less TV, whatever it is. How many are not accepting the moment? That as the moment arises, there's a resistance that occurs, and you're not accepting it. And the last one is letting go. Letting go. So that's part of acceptance. Acceptance is sort of the first part of letting go, of accepting things as they are, of letting them be, of not holding on to them, not attaching to them too much. I had a dream once where I was the best man at a friend's wedding, and I was trying to think of what to talk about in the speech, and I wanted to talk about what love is, and I wanted it to be authentic, right, to like a feeling that I had. Not I could go on Google and say what is love, right? And get all these things and say love, and stand up there and say love is whatever and that didn't there's something that didn't feel right about that. It wasn't coming from me, it was coming from somebody else, and so and maybe like 5 or 7 days, I can't remember, before the actual wedding, I had this dream, and I was standing there with my friend, and I had my hand open, and this bird, I believe it was a dove, was on my hand, and I wanted to hold on to the bird. I wanted the bird, right? There was sort of a relationship that I was wanting with this bird. And so so what do we do if you want to, if you want to hold on to something, what do? You grab it, right? You hold it. And so I held it. So here's my hand, right? So it's flat like this, and the bird lands on my hand, and I go, oh, that's a really pretty bird. And so what do? I start squeezing my hand. I start sort of making a grip like that. And what does the bird do? The bird starts fluttering its wings and wants to get the hell out of there. And the harder it's trying to get out of there, the harder I'm actually trying to squeeze it to keep in. And I was like, well, this isn't working. This isn't working. Bird wants to get the hell out of there. I'm trying to squeeze the bird. I'm trying to cage the bird in, and you know, and I just want the bird, right? I want the bird to stay, stop moving, right? What am I doing? I'm holding the bird, like squeezing it, and then I realized, oh, I need to open my hand. I need to actually release it. And what happened when I did that is the bird was on my hand and it actually stayed there. And the bird got to fly away and then come back and fly away and come back and fly away and come back. And so I gave that lack of grasping, holding on, striving, hey, be open, let it go. And in doing that, there might be freedom in that process. So those are the attitudinal foundations of mindfulness practice by Jon Kabat-Zinn. Non-judging, patience, beginner's mind, trust, non-striving, acceptance, and letting go. And you know, I do recommend maybe writing these down on a sticky note and just putting them on your computer, you know, and say, oh, how am I doing with non-judging? You know, you're writing somebody an email. How am I doing with non-judging? Oh, I'm not doing so well with non-judging. Let me reword this email. How am I doing with trust of unfolding of the process? No, I'm not trusting anything right now. How am I doing with accepting the present moment? I want the present moment to change, right? How am I doing with letting go, patience, beginner's mind? How many times do you think in our lives have we stepped on a flower that is blossoming in our own hearts or minds because we were impatient? Just interesting to think about that. Oh, wow. Let me just allow the moment to be. Let me accept the moment with patience and non-judging, with a beginner's mind, trusting the natural unfoldment of the present moment in a non-striving fashion, with the ability to allow and let go. The ability to allow and let go. All right. We go into our practice. All right. Let's go into our practice. Let's find a comfortable position. Position you will feel relaxed yet alert. Closing your eyes if you feel comfortable closing your eyes. If not, having a soft downward gaze, as if you're looking off onto the horizon. And taking 2 or 3 deep breaths. And with each in-breath, seeing if you can relax your body and release any tension. And with each out-breath, making yourself even more comfortable, moving your body in any way you need to move your body to allow it to be totally supported by whatever surface it's on. And then breathing regularly. And for this practice, bringing your attention to your thighs, to the backs of your thighs or your sit bones, to wherever you are making contact with the surface that you are on, whether it's through your thighs or sit bones. And bringing your attention to that area. And just noticing, is there a difference in pressure between the right and the left? Is the contact the same? Or is it different? If it's different, how is it different? Do you notice more pressure or less pressure on one side? Do you notice any numbness or tingling? And as your mind wanders, as soon as your mind wanders, simply redirecting it back to the sensation that your thighs or sit bones are making with whatever surface they're on. And just noticing in this simple practice of directing your attention, is there any judging? How is your level of patience in this moment? Are you eager to get on to the next moment? Are you eager to get on to eating lunch? Can you open up to patience and just letting things unfold in their own time? And as your mind wanders, again, bringing him back to the sensation of your thighs, making contact with whatever surface they're on. As you bring your attention to the sensation in your thighs, see if you can open up your awareness to include your low back or your feet. And just notice what occurs. Do you already know what is going to happen? Have you already characterized the sensation based on past experience? See if you can open up to have a beginner's mind, as if you've never felt this sensation before. And just be with it with an open curiosity. To moving sensation. Like a child touching a flower for the first time. Reminding yourself to be an impartial witness. Have patience. To inquire with a beginner's mind. And to trust. Do you trust this moment? Do you trust the natural unfoldment of what there is present in this moment right now? What is appearing for you? Reminding yourself that there's no goal. To be with yourself in this moment as it's arising, having no attachment, and from your back or feet to your thighs, can you increase and expand your awareness to include your mid-back and shoulders? Your shoulders down to your mid-back, low back, thighs, legs and feet. Just as a sensation of what is arising for you in this moment. Being patient with yourself. Trusting the process. Accepting the present moment. Inquiring about the sensations that arise in the present moment with an open curiosity, a willingness to be with what is. There's no right or wrong, good or bad. Just is in this moment. And as we bring this short meditation to a close today, just seeing how you can incorporate the 7 attitudinal foundations of mindfulness into your life: non-judging, patience, beginner's mind, trust, non-striving, acceptance, and letting go. And now taking 2 or 3 deep breaths. Opening your eyes if your eyes were closed. Reorienting yourself to your room and surroundings. Stretching if you feel like you need to stretch. And just take a moment to reflect on your practice today.